Hi everyone. So I've been playing quite a lot of Battlefield Hardline's beta over the last couple of days, and as you know I was highly critical of the very last beta they did, saying that this really was just an expansion pack for the Battlefield series. There wasn't enough really on display there to describe it as a AAA title. So they're back, and with a new beta, including having re-rounded out really the feature set here and what we can kind of expect from the gameplay. Now, things have improved a considerable amount. This now feels a lot more like the sort of game you'd want to actually play. It's faster, both the movement speed and the kind of gunplay mechanics, everything just feels that little bit more nippy. It almost feels like this is kind of sitting in between Battlefield, that we know and love, and Call of Duty, that we know and sometimes respect. However, this faster game style, whilst it works to a certain extent, it does make maps feel just a little bit smaller than I was kind of expecting. The game modes available in the beta are essentially Conquest, that we all know, Heist, which involves cracking open a bank safe and stealing the money, and Hotwire mode, which will see you stealing cars and attempting to keep them away from your opponents for as long as possible while scoring points. Now certainly the Heist game mode and Hotwire game modes are really fun, but they're only really fun for a short amount of time, and then you start to see the problems they're having. Essentially, the Hotwire mode is really interesting, and it's probably the most fun I've had during this beta phase. Until I realised that I'd spent the last 2 hours riding around in the back of a van, going round and round the outside of the map. Because already we've found that gamers naturally are going to find their way to the thing that makes them the most in-game credits and XP, so they can simply power level their way up to max level. Essentially we have here a game mode that would be really fun if it wasn't for the human aspect of the fact that we always want to do things the easiest way possible. The game mode does work quite nicely, but it's fundamentally flawed if we have a situation where everybody is basically just doing a conga line round the map and occasionally blowing each other up. It kind of removes the, well, Battlefield aspect here really. It's a real pity. Obviously this one would have been picked up during closed testing, but this is the game type they've gone for, and this is the game type we've got. Heist mode feels very much like Call of Duty's headquarters, if the headquarters was a bag of money and could be moved around the map. For the criminals, they want to steal those two bags of money. For the police, they want to stop them and return it to the safe. Now the game type here works quite nicely from a levolution point of view. There's a couple of different ways into the vault and to escape the vault, creating some interesting choke points. However, this game mode tends to become more like a respawning and death simulator as opposed to anything that would approach a war game or a Battlefield game. This really isn't Battlefield, and it's a strange thing that effectively they've recreated Call of Duty in the Frostbite engine. Now, speaking of that Frostbite engine, unfortunately it is looking very long in the tooth. So long in fact that it almost feels like it needs to be taken out back and shot through the head and turned into glue. I cannot fathom why EA would go ahead with a game like this and essentially not bother doing anything about the textures, or the lighting model, or anything that would make this feel like a AAA game released in 2015. What we actually have here is a game that feels like it was released in 2013. And now, as we know, Battlefield was not the best looking game necessarily when looked at from a PC perspective and then compared on consoles, and the same is true here. On consoles this game looks bloody awful. On PC it looks just about passable on ultra settings. Now bearing in mind we've had some big first person shooters come out over this last year. Wolfenstein, Far Cry 4, these are games which have really turned up the notch when it comes to graphical fidelity, and yet EA apparently is going to release a game this year in its Battlefield franchise that feels, well, like it's been ported across from PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It just doesn't feel AAA in 2015. What it feels like, I'm afraid, is a map pack. And this was the same problem I had when they first showed this game off. It doesn't feel like we're getting our money's worth, because literally it looks like they've just taken everything from Battlefield 4 and rebuilt a few maps on top of it and a new game mode. I'm sorry, it just isn't good enough, EA. It's not good enough for a AAA title that you're going to want to charge full price for. Now, One thing I will say is I have had a lot of fun during this beta, but I could feel the fun starting to wear off just a little bit quicker than I kind of would have expected from a Battlefield game, and that I've had with other Battlefield or even Call of Duty games. There's a lot here that's interesting. There's a lot here that shows great promise, but to me, I think Battlefield Hardline 2, when they release it, if they do, in a few years' time, might be a more suitable opportunity for them, for the simple reason that I think they're doing a lot of learning here, and that learning has not necessarily created a game which is going to have longevity. I think this is a title that is going to do reasonably well with the Battlefield faithful, because at the end of the day it's some new maps to play with, some new guns and some new game types, but it's not really going to satisfy those people who are looking for the next big multiplayer first-person shooter. There's just not enough here that is new or exciting to really make this work. For my mind, Battlefield Hardline is going to end up with a muted critical response. I think people are going to be like, yeah, new maps, new guns, bit of new Battlefield, but there's nothing really here that strikes it as being at the very top of the AAA food chain. In fact, I would probably go to describe this as a AA title. It's the kind of thing that in many years gone by that we would have simply described as a 15 quid map pack, or, you know, DLC as it became known. But at the end of the day, this just doesn't feel like the Battlefield game we've been waiting for. It just doesn't have that Battlefield vibe in the right kind of ways. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, you can pledge $1 a month on Patreon to help support the Androidizen, keeping us 100% independent, an honest opinion direct from the UK. If you pledge $1 a month, you'll be entered into our prize pool to win cool items from our review bag. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. We love to chat.